So this is part 2. We will be looking at the gradient meshes. The first thing on that artboard, what I want you to do is go to your layers, and we will create another layer, okay? And make sure, what I would say, lock the other ones. So create new one and name it gradient mesh. And BG for background. BG. So gradient mesh BG. It's gonna be a long name, but it's there, so we know. Okay? Gradient mesh BG. And double click on it so you can see. And I want you to go to internet. I want to show you how you can convert an image into gradient mesh. Doesn't mean it comes out really like what you want, but there's a way to do it as well. So go ahead and go into Firefox, and then I want you to do landscape, just landscape, okay? So go ahead and type landscape or nature. Find one that has a lot of different colors in it. Right. So find one. Again, if it's colorful, the better, okay? If it's kind of boring, it will not come out as nice. Like this one will be good, like something like this. You know, maybe this will work too. So download one, save it, so you can use. So find any one. I already have one from my Wednesday class, so I will use. So find one, and then we will continue. Jack, what I want you to do right now for that, make sure in a gradient mesh background, go ahead and go File, Place, and find the image. Okay, find the image. Wherever you put it, it should be there. Mine is here under Images. I want this landscape or this one. I have like 2 landscapes and they name differently. I think I like this one better. Okay. Now, if your landscape is too big, we can go ahead and resize it to fits and that, you know, that half of the page. It can be smaller than a half. So this is fine. Like this size is fine. All right. So we can convert this into meshes. Now the only thing is there's so many colors and stuff. Notice how it's gonna do it. So once you have it in, go ahead and now notice here we have options too, like image trace, which I don't want anybody to use image trace. You know what image trace does? It will trace around it, create different things. And to me, it's just the most awful thing to use. And anybody uses will not probably fail my project. So. But if I go under Object, Gradient Mesh, I'm using I lost my mouse. Create Gradient Mesh. And Preview. Okay, now right now it looks pretty. It's only, by default, mine should be, I mean, you did a quiz, 2 by 2, right? But if you do more, you have more points. If I add 50, I think the highest you can go is 55. Or 50 is the highest, by 50. How much more detail it is? You see the difference? So 50 by 50. Flat, it means what? I will not put a color on top, like the highlight. That's what flat means. Because I can add a highlight going from center out. And it's very small now because there's a lot of points. And I can also do to edge going from out inside. You see that, what it did? But right now I'm just going to do flat. And preview, so I want to see it. And then do OK. Now, do you see how my image is looking? It looks like I need better glasses. That's how it looks like. That means all those points would have to be manipulated. That's a lot of work. But let's say you want to abstract something in the background. You can manipulate it. That's fine. But let us look at something else underneath when it comes to creating gradient mesh. So leave this, save. So you have that example. That is a mesh now. It's a lot of meshes there, huh? One rule when you do create a mesh. Do not start with many meshes. You want to go from less and build up. Okay. So if we will just do one really quickly, rectangle tool. And so I'll give you some rules that you may not know about, or even if you use it. If you're doing a shape that's behind, you'll be tracing. Start with a mid-tone color. Start with a mid-tone. Otherwise, it will just be selecting white for you, right? So let's say if I want to go with the color orange, like my shade, the mid-tone shade is orange. I will select that shade from the image, okay? And I will draw it. Now, there'll be some shapes that are very complex that require, the meshes may come up funny, and I will mention that later on. So, there are two ways you can create a gradient mesh like you did. One way is going object gradient mesh, and another one is the mesh tool. The method that I prefer using is actually starting with object gradient mesh. And most of the time, if you want to do good mesh, you want to start with this method, okay? Right. So 50 by 50, I told you we start with less. So let's do 2 by 2. All right. Now we can see that if I want the center, it has the highlight out. So can you see how this mesh is working? It's looking at that point. Those are the mesh points. And it's blending the color. What are the other colors of the other points? So it's going from light, which is actually white right there, and it's spreading. If I want this color to be not going as far, what would I have to do? I would have to add other mesh points to stop it and fill with this color here, right? Because you always look at, this is called a mesh patch. So it's going from one location, and this way, this white is going to the 4 different patches. And then those colors here, right there, right? And then if we do to edge, it goes from outside in, kind of thing, the highlight. Right now, just go ahead and do flat. Why I start with 2 by 2? 1 by 1 is not enough. You want to mold your mesh the way the color is showing in the object. So if I start with let's say I have an object behind and it's like shaped like this, I can go ahead and click on my mesh points using the direct selection tool, which is A, and I can move them. You see I can move it? So I can move it down like this. Go ahead and move it down. Make sure now notice what you have. It creates the Bezier handles. Those are not points. And you can see when you have a mesh, you have the diamonds showing. So you can move them. Look, go ahead and change it so it's like a little dip. Now, if I create a mesh, I can use a tool. And guess what? Because I already modified this line, when I create a new one and I want it to be the same shape. U is the shortcut, and we'll be using that one a lot. If I want to add one here, right now there's no color. We're only dealing with midtone. And that is important. Start with midtone because later on you may have some funny things happening. I'll show you what I mean. But see how that shape is conforming? Now if I had to change both, and the more I have, how much more work is it to change 20 of them than change one, right? So you start with less. Right? You start with less. Right now we have nothing to really do with this. But go ahead and select. Again, I'll go back between my direct selection tool. Even though you can use the mesh tool to do things with it, you can, hold the option key and delete the point. See how I did that? With the mesh tool. And just delete horizontal and vertical lines. Okay? But we can just select this and we can change the shade. So go ahead and select the bottom one and choose some darker shade of, I'm going to use this one, right? And then leave this one as a midtone and then go on top at another mesh point. Now notice what happens. My last color I selected is what? This dark one. So if I click on it with the dark one, it will add the last color that I have used. Okay, the same principle, always pay attention to your fill. All right, because if I go back with my direct selection tool and choose this point, you see that? My fill changes. And if I want to add another point, what color would that be? With the mesh tool, what color would that be? This shade, because that's the last point I clicked on. You see what I mean? And it kind of constrained the, so I click it again here. Notice how my, you can really see it on the projector. It's killing me. Right? You see this on the video, but on the projector you can't. So I will make this a little bit more drastic for you. Can you see that? More? So I choose black so you can see it. Okay. That red is looking like maroon on the projector. So see how this is already being stopped by the meshes. It kind of controls the distance and the spread. Now, if any of those points can be changed. However, if you go on the outside, you may actually affect the shape itself. So stay, unless that's what you want to do, unless this is what you want to do, you know. Any points you add is more like, it really creates anchor points too on there, on the outside. But keep that principle in mind when you're selecting. Start with less and add to it so you can mold color. Okay, that is important for you to recognize, and hopefully that will stick with you, because we will be moving on to the next part of it, which actually creating the meshes. Okay, and see how we start with midtone. Important, start with midtone, start with less points. And now also there's another method called box method, which is this. If your shape is irregular, let's say it has different twists and turns, the mesh will not come out right unless you start with the box. And I'll tell you that in a second, okay? So with that, I actually don't need this shape, so we'll delete it, right? We don't need it. And next, go back to your layers, lock this layer, gradient mesh background, lock it. Now I want you to create a new layer. I want you to name it. This is gonna be our tracing layer we're gonna use. So name it original 1. Original 1 or grapes original or whatever you want to call it. We're gonna call it original 1. And we will place an image. So file, place. And you should have copied that folder, the assignment. So go ahead and navigate to that folder so you can get it. The grapes. This is what I want you to get, is the grapes. Let's see where I put mine. So we will place grapes. Now they're a little bigger, so I will hold my shift key and resize it. Like, it's okay if this is sticking out as long as it doesn't cover anything, okay? Just look at the artboard. It shouldn't cover, like, it's okay if it sticks out like this. As long as this fills and doesn't cover on top. So you will be asked to, you will actually work on creating gradient mesh for 3 of the grapes. And there's extra credit here too. If you do 4th grape, I'm going to show you which one I'm going to start with. If you do a 4th grape, you get extra points if you do it correctly, okay? Now, one thing, we will not touch this image, so we will lock it. Right. Now, before we go on, if you move this image, you give me the document, the image will be gone, because it's looking for that folder. That's what happened with your projects as well. It's looking for that place where you put it. So what we have to do, and this is what you're going to do for this one, and what's what you're going to do for the other one, right? You're going to go into that original one, click on your layers, and I want you to go into, actually if I have to, we'll do it hopefully. Click on release to layers. You need to do it for your project as well. Okay, it's locked. Okay, so I need to unlock it. So it gives me the rule. Okay, unlock it, and you do it again. And it's right now in my layer. That means when you can bring that over and you don't have to find that image. So at home, when you bring it, that image will be showing. Okay, now you can lock it and create a new layer. Oh, okay, thank you. There, wrong place. New layer. Double click on the thumbnail of the layer because I don't know what color yours is, but cyan will not show up well on the green. So we will name this grapes mesh. All right, and then the color we will use is, I will use light red. Or you can use orange, something that really shows up so you can see it. Right, so grapes mesh, orange shade. Okay, now here this shape is not irregular. The only thing you will have to work on is grapes. Now this grape doesn't count towards extra credit or doing. Okay, now this shape is not irregular, so you can actually start drawing the shape out. Now notice it has spots on it. Some people, like if it has a spot, use critical thinking. This is probably a separate shape, not a mesh. This is probably a mesh. You have a highlight. Now look at your grapes and notice this is where you have to analyze things. Where are my highlights, shadows, midtones? How does color from here transfer to here? Is it the same? Now one thing, we are looking at millions of pixels, and sometimes that can be tricky when you're dealing with pixels, because one pixel next to each other may be brown and you choose brown and you think you're doing the right thing and you finish the shape and somehow it's all brown, not green. So you have to be very meticulous with selecting. So first thing you have to do is use the pen tool to trace the shape around, okay? It's not perfect circles, so we're gonna use a pen tool. And another rule, the least amount of points you have, the easier to create a gradient. I also try to make sure they're even. When you put a point on bottom, put it same place on top or something like that. Top, bottom, side. Because gradient will mesh will look at all those points. Right, so go ahead and draw. Now, one thing, what did I told you to do in the first shape? Choose the mid-tone shade. How do you choose it? New tool, eyedropper, I for eyedropper. And the mid-tone in my image is probably here. Now notice if I click next to it, it selects black. Is that, you're doing that too? Mine has been doing that. It's like, that's no, so just click. Look, see, black. It's been really annoying, so I have to always check. Pixels are funny. Okay, so I have my mid-tone, go to my pen tool, which is P, and I will just draw the shape out right now. And again, make sure you only that layer. So there. I can add more points if I need to. Remember, at the end, you have to draw out the shape again. So now if you need to retouch it, so finish it and then we will see the details of the shape. To see the color that's underneath, this is what you would have to do. Go back to your layers, that mesh, and we'll be switching around this, and then hold the command key and click in the eye, so it's in the outline mode, right? So for now, we'll be switching between the outline mode, which you did that for your project when you trace, right? So command and then click on the eye so you can see just the outline. Make sure the shape that you drawn is close to yours, and really zoom in to your image. You cannot do meshes unless you zoom in, especially when you have tiny meshes, which will create. Okay. Now you can, I mean, I told you already there are two ways of adding the mesh, and the preferred way is going object mesh. Sometimes you can get away with it by not going there, but we will. So everybody drawn their shape? Because this is where we're gonna get more complex. Did you do what I just did? Hide that layer, so it's toggle view with command key. So next we're gonna go object, create gradient mesh. And 1 by 1. No, 1 by 1 doesn't do anything. 2 by 2. Now, some other rules are worth doing. So 2 by 2 is fine to start with. This is what I like to do. First of all, think about the shape of this shape. And also think about where you have the highlight and what, you know, I like to find the highlight first. Sometimes it can be the shadow depending on what it is. What shape is this highlight? It's round, right? So it's not straight. Also, where would I have to put the point to make the highlight go in 4 directions? Where is the strongest? Center, right? So this mesh would have to be in the center of my circle. Now this is kind of off, so we need to position the shape. See what I did just doing? So watch me first. I'm modifying my mesh to follow the shape of the circle as well as looking at the shape of the object. And I told you before, important where you put your mesh points. Some of you are not zoomed in. Zoom in, you'll see you cannot do a detailed job if you don't. So right in the middle. Right now, you can't see anything because you are in this view. And I will not do anything. First thing I'm going to do, I'm going to add more points that I know I will need to be starting with this color, right? Because if I start doing, what happens now, just FYI, what would happen if I select this point and I change it to this white one behind it? When I create more points, I'll be white. So watch this. If I do this, don't do it. I select this one, well, the light, right? I just changed it. If I add more mesh points, I'm just guessing right now. They're all now, oh, they're black for some reason. See what happened? Right. I don't know why they're black. My computer is acting up funny. So I don't want them to be black or white or whatever color they are. So we want to make sure we don't do anything to this. Let me go back and make sure it's not all black. This has been happening with my Illustrator since Wednesday when it's doing everything black. Even though there's no black. Oh, I guess it thinks it's black there. Right, Midtone. So right now, only thing I want you to worry about is the position of your shape. Right? And we always look at your fill. Now, this highlight doesn't go all the way out. It is contained here. I want you to see where it becomes a midtone, because that's where we're going to put points in 4 directions. So when you're working from a highlight, you're going out. Watch my hands. You're going out. But if you're working from the edge, you're going in. And that's how you'll be selecting color. Okay? So look at, in your image, go a little bit above it. This is, you see where it starts? The midtone? You want to go tiny bit over that. Tiny bit. So make sure your mesh tool is selected. U is for mesh tool. It's still a midtone. We're not selecting anything else. And click a little bit out, like when it becomes a midtone. Like right there is fine. And then the same thing on the other side. Okay? This is important rule. Now notice this shape. It's not rounding like this one, right? So I have to choose. I mean, I can go with my selection tools. I don't add more points, or just click on these and see if I can round it up a little bit here. It doesn't really matter too much at this point, as long as the top ones will be rounded. So just leave it for now. Okay, we add more. Again, you're looking at, so we did these sides, but what about the ones underneath and on top? So kind of think about where the midtone start and go a little bit above that. So that's why you need to zoom in. Don't use your eyes. Zoom in and kind of see. The more you work with color and gradients, it's good to always take a break. So after grapes, we take a break. Right. So right now, I'm adding my meshes only. And they should be all midtone. At this point, we will be doing a few things. So switch your tools to direct selection tool. A. Click on that middle point. And let me see the bottom of my document if I can. Okay, trying to get my document so I can zoom in better. Okay. I want to do zoom. Okay. So now I have this one, and we will click on the lightest point in a highlight. Notice there are many pixels. So you want to click one that you think is like the lightest. Okay. So now, and do not judge your eye. We did midtone on these, but you don't know. It might be a different shade here than here, right? But right now, did you do the highlight only? So this is how it should look like when you go to your layers, click the command key. Should be your highlight. Is your highlight looking like this? It may not be as bright because it's projector. Is it yeah. So the shape should be rounded. Make sure it looks correct. Go between it. Okay. If it doesn't, then you have to modify the points and move them right around so it spreads correctly. This is pretty correct to me. Like the way it goes. This might be too close actually, like a little bit off there. I'm gonna fix this. So next, what we're gonna do, we'll be looking at the points outside here. Now we have nothing yet done on these sides, but okay, so we will do click. So how I do it, I check the point, I go to my eyedropper, and I sample the color behind it. And that's how I selected the highlight. I click on the point, so I go between the direct selection tool, select it, I for eyedropper, and sample behind. Same thing we're gonna do on the colors right on top, this one, and the one you want to go in probably close to it, you can go this one here. Make sure it's not black like mine is showing. There's no black in my image, thank you. Or you can go in like close to it. You always want to be close, kind of see what is happening. You don't want to go here because that is a different shade, and this shade will spread everywhere else. So you kind of want to be close to the point. Okay, and you're gonna do it with every one of them, double checking. So you're going out. Right. And always pay attention to the fill, so it's still correct. And then the last one I'm gonna double check. Alright, and at this point you should have a little bit modified highlight, very slight variations of green. Okay, nothing too much yet. So this is how your mesh should look like. That we are dealing with several colors on the edges as well and inside. So notice here, like the good example is we have a darker shape in the bottom here. Look at your, right? Lighter one, and then the midtone. And that means there have to be several points going around being restricted. So with that, I'm going to select, now think about what is your fill. Because you want to be the last fill, make sure it's green and not like white. Because it will add all those white points. And select the mesh tool, which is U. Zoom in. And kind of see, this is, okay, so this will be my midtone going out this way. You see how I did that? Okay, maybe a little bit more. Something like, sometimes you have to practice. Maybe here, because it's restricted. Then I have another point going here, it's a highlight. And that highlight, your shape has to constrain to that highlight. But again, that's a highlight. And then we also have the darkest part. So I'm adding, just watch for me for now. So I added 3 lines, and now I have a highlight here. So all my points, you would have to go and keep selecting and changing the shades because they're all different. And that's why I said start with less, because then you have to do more and more detail work on selecting them. and go with an eyedropper and just go between and doing that. That can become tedious the more detailed you are. Okay, so now here we're starting to have a little shadow. Black is not the shadow I'm looking for. Seriously, right there. So that's why it's so important what points you're selecting. See, I don't know if the projector allow me to show you how it looks like now, or it's gonna look. See, it added black some reason. I have issue with my Illustrator. So there's a point. Now, if you have something white or black, you will have to look at the point, because probably at some point you clicked on it and you created something else. Didn't even select black. My randomly keeps putting black even though I selected green. I don't know why. I think it's Illustrator. Okay, finally. So I will go back and fix that. So there, that's the bottom part. And then there's more highlight here, so I would have to make sure my stupid thing doesn't choose black for me, because it'd be choosing. You see how it goes black? Let's see. Right, it worked. So I'll be selecting these as well. Now, one thing here I want you to see. There is another shade right going around as well. So right here, I'll probably put another mesh. And there are several going on this side. There's like, you want to see where your change of color is and how it blends to next to each other. Okay? So more, and there'll probably be more on top as well. Right? So I can already see and prepare my shade. And there's another one, right? Can you see this one, guys? Right here. There's another one. It's like a, so that one is bigger, and it has to be modified with the different options, because you want to make sure this follows the shape of your color, right? As well. So this is right now what I have. And now, next thing, notice how many points we have on top. That's why always check your fill. And then I can go through each point. This is what's going to be more tedious. And make sure it doesn't select black for you, okay? And then you're going to select them all. Please pay attention. If you're working from inside, from outside in, you'll be sampling going to the inside. So when I select this point, I'm choosing one going out. Same. If I'm choosing this one, I'm going out. You see what I mean? From out in. I choose this one. I will not be sampling this shade. I'll be sampling this one. You're going inside. Same thing from this side. You're going from in, and then from the top and bottom. From middle, you go out. This is better blends. And be going between your views to make sure the shapes look good. Okay, so I am not recording everything. I'm just recording what I'm sampling going from the outside in. Now, where I have a lot of points, you want to make sure you check all those points. They should be all the same, like dark green. You kind of go between and check it. So just playing around. Okay, I won't be recording the whole thing because you can kind of see how I'm going from outside and when I'm sampling it. So I'm looking on, selecting not the shades behind it, but going forward to the middle. I'm on top and I have more points, so it takes a little bit more time, especially here. So I have to go through every point and choose something close, and I'm going in. There'll be another line going here because some shade changes too. So I'm just clicking on my keyboard. The easiest thing, you need what? I, U, and I, and A, right? Makes it faster. And let me see. Okay, that needs to be lighter. So far, let me see. Now, if you see, one thing I want you to pay attention to right now when you're doing this, I'm going to pause. I don't know if the projector is not showing, but I have a big line, darker line going from here to here. That means there probably needs to be another mesh because that shadow is only contained here. So you can always look at it, and it's going from here, but it stops. So I would need to do another mesh. Again, only do it when you finished with the other points. And projector, you couldn't see that on there, but I knew it when I saw it, okay? And then here I have to smooth out the bottom too. Just working with the points. Now the new points you created, you want to select the colors too, because they might be picking up the ones from before. Okay. Okay, let me see this part. It's good. Playing with the points. Let's move it out. Okay, so my grape is almost finished. You cannot see the projector kind of killed it a little bit, but it has different shades. Notice how my mesh is on this one. Now your mesh doesn't have to be exactly like mine, but I was trying to conform it to the shape, and I just have to smooth out this side here with the colors. That's because I have a lot of points, and what I do to smooth it out, this is a good tip for any of you. I select, you can even hover around those points, select them all, like close to it, and then choose the color that is like all of them go into. That makes sense? So let me zoom in. A regular zoom so that works. And then hopefully now it will smooth it all out. Let's see. Blend it out. Yep. And oh no, here. More points. Now I click on that and select it. And dropper. Right. So it's smoothing it out a little bit. You see? Now in the video you can see this more. I just have to smooth this part out and we'll be done with it. Analyzing this, I want to put another one right there. That will not be black. So undo, and then you select my mid-tone shade. And pick those up. I put another line for more precision, but only after I checked every point and changed it. Oh, wrong tool. Okay, and when you are done, this is how it's supposed to look like. Oh, no, not like that. What happened? Not sure what happened with my shape. Right, so let's see how it looks like. So something like this, with this being smooth out. Okay, you can see the meshes. And then we can save it, and we will, now the rest of the grapes you will do on your own. I'm not going to show you.